Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. What do we need to see Clemson clean up going into week 2 against App State? I understand this is a national media darling in terms of everyone picking Clemson to get upset by App State week 2. Trust me, I ain't going that far. There were a lot of things against Georgia that you liked what you saw from Clemson, specifically on the defensive side of the football in that first half. Now, did that football game get away from Clemson in the second half? Yeah, absolutely, because the offense couldn't stay on the field. I mean, there's only so many opportunities that you want to give Carson Beck and all those weapons until they are going to start putting some points on the board. And so this Clemson defense, I think, has every opportunity to be one of the best defenses in the country in 2024. Now the question is, what can the offense do to kind of just get to a point where they can be dangerous in 2024? Because what we saw on Saturday afternoon was an offense that you flat out just can't win with. And I understand, and I read the message boards and I read Twitter, and Clemson fans have all sorts of opinions on what they saw. And I kind of agree with a lot of those opinions. I think it starts with execution, specifically in those early portions of that football game was not nearly good enough. I think the play calling certainly needs to get better as well. Want to get into a couple of different things that, after looking at the numbers and watching the game back a few times, I certainly noticed. Would love to hear from you guys in the comments section. I think that is, at least in my mind, one of the beauties of doing this kind of episode is I'm on Twitter, I'm on the message boards, and I see Clemson fans feel all sorts of way about that football game and about this team. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments section. Of course, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. And without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start with you got to execute better. And I get it's really easy to blame Dabo Swinney or Garrett Riley. And I'm sure a decent part of the blame does fall on the head coach and the offensive coordinator when you put up 3 points in a football game. That being said, Garrett Riley schemed up some really nice plays to open up that football game. Clemson just didn't make it happen. You take a look at that first drive. I mean, Cade Klubnik has a routine throw and catch to Phil Maffa that probably goes for 15 to 20 yards the first play of the football game and puts it right at his feet. That has nothing to do with Garrett Riley. That is your quarterback just needing to execute the basic throws to win you football games. Then you look at the second play. They hit a eight yard ball to Jake Bringenstool to get them back in third and manageable. You're lined up in an illegal formation. You go back to second and 15. Jake Bringenstool drops a pass. You're all of a sudden in third and 15. You're punting the football. This drive could have looked so much different with just basic execution from this Clemson team. You had two mental mistakes in terms of a missed easy throw and a missed easy catch, and then an illegal formation. And then you take a look at, I believe, the second drive of the football game. Cade Klubnik throws a beautiful post corner to Antonio Williams. It goes for 36 yards. You're at midfield. The play right after that, you have your guards run into each other because they're not on the same page. You go for a 2 yard loss. You're already behind the chains. You end up punting the football. And so I look at this Clemson offense and say, you saw some flashes, but the flashes were too far and in between, and you weren't executing the basic plays to win you this football game or be close in this football game. We all know Georgia is the number one team in the country. Now, I thought we saw a Georgia defense that kind of looked like they were in 2021, where nobody was really moving the football on them. That being said, if you're Clemson, you want to stay in this football game, you have to be almost perfect to beat a team like Georgia, and Clemson wasn't even close to being perfect in terms of the execution on offense on Saturday. The second thing I want to look at is play action. You look at this Georgia defense, you make no mistake, it's a very aggressive defense. They want to fire downhill. This is a defense that you want to work play action against. Even if you're not running the football all that effectively, which Clemson struggled to run it, these linebackers are playing with their hair on fire. They are firing down when they see run. Mix in a little bit play action. When you saw Clemson go to play action, Cade Klubnik was 6 of 6 for 46 yards. I mean, they only used it 6 times, but it was very successful when they went to it. And when you're playing that kind of defense, and Clemson's going to be able to run the football more effectively against other teams, when you are running the football that well, you have to be able to marry that rushing attack with the passing game. And Clemson just wasn't able to do that against Georgia on Saturday. Number 3, and I think we just got to have this conversation, Cade Klubnik has to be utilized in the run game. Like, look, Cade is just not good enough as a pocket passer to treat him like a pocket passer. And Cade Klubnik is a phenomenal athlete. I get he's not the biggest quarterback, but when you are struggling to run the football like Clemson was struggling against Georgia, one of the best ways to get a little bit of juice in the run game is using Cade Klubnik's legs. He didn't have a single carry that went over 0 yards. I mean, he was just kind of running around in the backfield. Cade Klubnik is a guy that can bring juice to this Clemson offense, specifically running the football. I think it's a very similar conversation to how Michigan used JJ McCarthy, where it wasn't necessarily, hey, we're going to run JJ McCarthy 15 times in a football game because, again, Cade, JJ, they're not necessarily the biggest quarterbacks. You don't want to have them taking hits 15 to 20 times a game. That being said, when you are struggling to run the football like Michigan sometimes did in 2023, mixing in a quarterback keeping it on a read option, it makes a lot of sense. And Clemson just didn't really seem to go to it again. When you have Georgia just playing with their hair on fire, for lack of better terms, using Cade and some misdirection stuff, it makes a lot of sense. This kid can provide juice in the run game. And when you are struggling to run the football like Clemson did, use Cade a little bit as an athlete. Get him in space. I think that's a really good way to get Cade settled in this football game too. Last thing I want to talk about, pushing the ball down the field, which Clemson was 1 of 5, 20-plus yards down the field. You saw Cade throw a beautiful ball to Antonio Williams, and he came up with the catch. The other 4 passes, one to Cole Turner, who a note on Cole Turner, are you telling me Brian Wesco and TJ Moore can't bring more juice than Cole Turner? I'm just being frank. I got nothing against Cole Turner, but I look at Cole Turner and say, yeah, drops, you weren't separating. And then on the deep ball, Cade doesn't throw that bad of a football, and Cole Turner just can't find it. And so the personnel choice kind of confused me at a certain point when Clemson was getting nothing going on offense. Like, my thought process was throw the freshman into the fire a little bit. Like, what's the worst that can happen? You're not moving the football with the veterans anyways. Like, what happens if you put Antonio Williams and Tyler Brown on the slot, Brian Wesco and TJ Moore on the outside? I think Clemson needed to kind of mix it up and go to some young talent, and they just didn't. You have Adam Randall. I mean, Cade Klubnik threw an okay ball against Adam Randall. Adam Randall's got to use that big frame, go up and make a play. He doesn't. And so I'd like to see Clemson push the ball down the field a little bit more, give their wide receivers opportunities to make plays for their quarterback. And if those wide receivers can't make those plays, go see if TJ Moore and Brian Wesco can. Because something kind of has to change. And that kind of my frustration with Dabo as a head coach. And I'll be on record and say, look, Dabo has had just about as much success as anybody as a head coach in the country. There are times when Dabo just wants to do it his way, and sometimes his way doesn't work and he doesn't deviate. He's stubborn, for lack of better terms. I like to see Dabo look at this Clemson offense and say, hey, something needs to change from both a schematic and personnel standpoint, and try to make those changes. Because as a Clemson fan, like, I can see the frustration where you look at this Clemson defense and say, this is a defense that we should win an ACC with, and quite frankly, should be in the national title conversation. I'm not saying I expect or pick Clemson to win a national title. That being said, the defense is good enough to win a national championship with. If this Clemson offense takes some sort of steps, and if you're Dabo Swinney, it is desperation mode, at least in my opinion, in terms of trying to find some sort of juice and something that works within this Clemson offense where you can rely on it, excuse me, to play some complementary football with this Clemson defense. Look, this Clemson defense, yeah, on paper, I see 447 total yards. They gave up 34 points. That's not on the Clemson defense. Clemson just couldn't stay on the football field on offense. When you put this defense out enough against one of the best quarterbacks in the country, in Carson Beck, they're going to get you. And in those second half adjustments that Georgia made, they were able to have some success. But at a certain point, you can't put it on this Clemson defense. You got to put it on this offense. And look, what I'm looking for against App State is some life on offense. Schematically, a little bit different. Personnel, a little bit different. You got to try to find something if you're Dabo. You have an opportunity. You look at the ACC right now, Florida State, not the team that we thought they were going to be. Miami looks pretty damn good, but that's about it. Like, this Clemson team, in my mind, is the second best team in the conference after 1 week. Go try to find some juice on offense. That's kind of what I'm saying. Again, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. It's, kind of a mix of, I wouldn't say optimism, but I'm kind of excited to see what this Clemson offense can do because I know this defense is damn good. And then it's frustration because we've had this conversation probably 20 times about this Clemson program. Would love to hear from you guys in the comments section. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.